Dr. Lisa Moreno had performed euthanasia on 23 military working dogs during her 8-year career at Naval Base Coronado's Military Working Dog Hospital. 23 partners she'd helped transition from service to silence. Each one tore at her, the trust in their eyes, the handler's suppressed grief, the moment when fierce loyalty simply stopped. But today felt different. At 37, Lisa had developed the professional distance required to function as a military veterinarian. She understood that euthanasia was sometimes mercy, the final kindness offered to animals whose bodies had broken under the demands of deployment, whose pain couldn't be managed, whose quality of life had deteriorated beyond recovery. The file in her hands belonged to K-9 Havoc, a 9-year-old German shepherd with an exemplary combat record. 3 deployments to Afghanistan and Iraq, 47 confirmed explosive detections, handler loyalty that had earned him commendations from commanding officers who normally viewed K-9s as equipment rather than operators. The diagnosis, signed by Dr. Philip Marsh, the senior K-9 program veterinarian, aggressive degenerative myelopathy, progressive paralysis of the hind limbs, quality of life deteriorated beyond recovery. Recommended euthanasia within 72 hours. Lisa had seen degenerative myelopathy before, a devastating neurological disease that destroyed the spinal cord, causing progressive paralysis that eventually left dogs unable to walk, control bodily functions, or live without suffering. There was no cure, only management until the kindest option was ending the suffering. But 72 hours from diagnosis to scheduled euthanasia felt rushed. Standard protocol recommended pain management trials, mobility assessment over multiple days, consultation with the handler about quality of life observations. Marsh's order had bypassed all of it. Havoc's handler sat in the procedure room, radiating controlled grief. Retired Chief Petty Officer David Dev Callahan was 41, broad-shouldered, with the kind of weathered face that came from a decade of deployment cycles. He'd left the SEALs 18 months ago after a mission injury shattered his femur. Surgical repair successful, but the damage too extensive for continued operational status. Dev had been rebuilding his life as a high school shop teacher in San Diego, teaching teenagers about welding and woodwork while privately processing the transition from warrior to civilian. Havoc was supposed to retire with him under the military working dog adoption program. The paperwork had been filed, processed, nearly approved. Then the diagnosis came. Now Dev sat on the sterile floor of the examination room with his hand resting on Havoc's head, his jaw tight with suppressed emotion that SEALs were trained to control. Lisa recognized the look. Handlers who'd survived combat together, shared foxholes and firefights, now facing the one enemy they couldn't defeat: biology. "Commander Callahan," Lisa said gently, using his former rank out of respect. "Dev," he corrected, voice rough. "I'm just a teacher now." "Dev," Lisa acknowledged. "I'm going to explain the protocol. Sedation first. Havoc will just feel sleepy, drift off peacefully. Then the sodium pentobarbital injection through the IV catheter in his leg. It stops the heart within seconds. No pain, no awareness. He'll be with you, and then he'll be at peace." Dev nodded without speaking. His hand moved in slow, deliberate strokes along Havoc's ears, the same gesture he'd probably used to calm his partner during missions, in the moments before breaching doors or approaching suspected IED locations. Havoc lay on his side, his hind leg stretched out in the position Lisa had come to recognize in paralyzed dogs. His breathing was calm, trusting. He'd been a warrior for 9 years. Now he was just a dog waiting for whatever came next, secure in the presence of the human he trusted most. Lisa prepared the sedative, pentobarbital sodium, the barbiturate used for humane euthanasia across veterinary medicine. She'd performed this procedure so many times that her hands moved automatically, drawing the dose, preparing the IV catheter, checking the syringe for air bubbles. "Do you want a moment alone with him first?" Lisa asked. Dev looked at her with eyes that held a decade of goodbyes. Teammates who hadn't come home, missions that had cost more than tactical reports acknowledged, and now this, the partner who'd kept him alive through all of it. "Yeah," he whispered. "1 more minute." Lisa stepped back, giving them privacy, while remaining close enough to intervene if needed. She'd learned that handlers needed this. The final embrace, the whispered words that no one else should hear, the moment when 10 years of partnership compressed into goodbye. Dev leaned down, forehead pressed against Havoc's neck, arms wrapping around the muscular shoulders that had carried gear through hostile territory, that had pressed against his leg during firefights, that had provided warmth during freezing Afghan nights when heaters failed and comfort mattered more than regulations. "Good boy," Dev murmured, his voice breaking despite sealed discipline. "Best boy. You did everything right. Every detection, every mission. You saved me more times than I can count. I'm sorry I couldn't save you." That's when Lisa noticed something that made her hands freeze mid-preparation. Havoc's hind legs, the ones supposedly paralyzed by degenerative myelopathy, were moving. Not spasms, not the involuntary reflexes that sometimes occurred in neurologically damaged animals. Deliberate, coordinated movement. Havoc was standing. The dog shifted his weight, bearing load on all 4 legs, his tail wagging slightly as he leaned into Dev's embrace. The movement was stiff, arthritis probably, consistent with a working dog's age. But it was functional, controlled, purposeful. Lisa had seen degenerative myelopathy dozens of times during her career. Dogs with this condition at advanced stages, the stage Marsh's diagnosis claimed Havoc had reached, could not stand. They could not bear weight on paralyzed hind limbs. They certainly could not wag their tails with muscular control that required intact spinal cord function. This was not a paralyzed animal. Lisa set down the syringe, her heart pounding. Something was wrong, terribly, fundamentally wrong. "Dev," she said carefully, "when was Havoc's last mobility assessment?" Dev looked up, confusion breaking through grief. 3 days ago. Dr. Marsh evaluated him, said Havoc couldn't stand without collapsing, that the paralysis was progressing too fast for treatment. He said it was time, that keeping him alive any longer would be cruel. Lisa's mind raced through diagnostic protocols, neurological markers, the clinical presentation of degenerative myelopathy at various stages. What she was witnessing didn't match any of it. "Dev, I need you to step back for a moment," Lisa said. He moved away reluctantly, his hand lingering on Havoc's head until distance forced separation. Havoc watched him go, ears forward, alert. Lisa called Havoc's name. "Havoc, come." The German shepherd stood, slowly, stiffly, but functional, and walked across the examination room floor toward Lisa. His gait showed arthritis, maybe hip dysplasia, common in working dogs his age. But his hind legs bore weight, his neurological function was intact. His tail wagged with muscular control. This was not end-stage degenerative myelopathy. This was an aging working dog with manageable joint disease. "What the hell is happening?" Dev demanded, his tactical mind engaging as confusion shifted to suspicion. Lisa pulled Havoc's complete medical file from the system and opened the imaging studies. The X-rays showed moderate joint degeneration, worn cartilage, some bone spurring, inflammation consistent with years of carrying heavy loads through demanding terrain. Treatable with anti-inflammatories, physical therapy, weight management, but no spinal cord compression, no nerve damage, no neurological deterioration, nothing that warranted euthanasia. Yet the written diagnosis, signed by Dr. Philip Marsh 3 days earlier, declared Havoc terminally ill with progressive paralysis and suffering beyond recovery. Someone had falsified the medical assessment. Lisa looked at Dev, at Havoc standing beside her, wagging his tail, at the syringe she'd prepared to end a life that wasn't actually ending. "We're not doing this," she said quietly. "Not today. Not until I understand what's happening." Dev's expression shifted from grief to operational focus. The same transformation Lisa imagined happened when SEALs switched from standby to mission execution. "Someone lied about Havoc's condition," Dev said. Not a question, a statement requiring explanation. "Yes," Lisa confirmed. "The question is why." Lisa and Dev spent the next 4 hours in her office, pulling records with the systematic thoroughness of an investigation. Dev's tactical training translated seamlessly to data analysis, pattern recognition, anomaly identification, constructing timelines from fragmentary evidence. What they discovered made Lisa's stomach turn. Havoc wasn't the only dog. Over the past 14 months, Dr. Marsh had recommended euthanasia for 8 military working dogs, all with terminal diagnoses, requiring immediate action. Lisa pulled each file, cross-referencing written diagnoses against imaging studies, lab results, and observational notes. Every single case showed inconsistencies. K-9 Bolt, diagnosed with liver cancer, euthanized within 72 hours, but the ultrasound images showed normal liver architecture, no masses, no metastases. K-9 Ranger, diagnosed with heart failure, euthanized immediately, but the echocardiogram revealed normal cardiac function. K-9 Storm, diagnosed with kidney failure, euthanized before the handler could arrange transport home, but the blood work showed mildly elevated creatinine, consistent with dehydration, not organ failure. 8 dogs, 8 falsified diagnoses, 8 rushed euthanasias that bypassed standard second opinion protocols. "Why would Marsh do this?" Dev asked, his voice tight with controlled fury. Lisa studied the files, looking for commonalities. All 8 dogs were high-value animals, elite detection specialists, combat-proven operators with multiple deployments. Dogs that represented years of training investment, tactical expertise, and operational experience. "These aren't ordinary working dogs," Lisa said. "These are the best. SEAL team partners, special operations units, Tier 1 assets." Dev pulled up the euthanasia records. Standard protocol required cremation via approved military channels, with documentation showing chain of custody, crematory invoices, and final disposition records. None of the 8 files contained any of that documentation. "They didn't die," Dev said, realization crystallizing. "They disappeared." Lisa felt cold certainty settling into her chest. Military working dogs, especially elite ones, were worth significant money to private military contractors, security firms, anyone needing dogs with combat experience and specialized training. The legal adoption process was tightly controlled, prioritizing handlers and screened families. But if someone could falsify terminal diagnoses and fake euthanasias, Dev was already on his phone, calling another former SEAL whose dog had been euthanized 6 months earlier. Lisa heard fragments of the conversation. Bolt, liver cancer, how fast? Did you see the test results? When Dev hung up, his expression was ice. The handler never saw diagnostic imaging, never got a second opinion. Marsh told him Bolt had weeks to live in agony, that euthanasia was mercy. The handler trusted him, signed the paperwork, never questioned it. Lisa ran database searches through military procurement systems, tracking financial anomalies in the K-9 program budget. What she found made the pattern complete. Dr. Philip Marsh had deposits totaling $840,000 in his personal accounts over 14 months, wire transfers from a company called Cerberus Global Defense. Lisa researched the company, private military contractor providing security services in conflict zones, specializing in elite canine detection and tactical support. Marsh was trafficking military working dogs for profit. "We need to report this," Lisa said. "NCIS, base legal, someone with authority to—" Her office door opened without knocking. Dr. Marsh stood in the doorway, his expression carefully neutral. "Dr. Moreno, I understand you've delayed K-9 Havoc's euthanasia," Marsh said, his voice professional but edged with threat. "That's a serious deviation from medical protocol. I'm ordering you to complete the procedure immediately." Lisa stood, positioning herself between Marsh and the computer screen, displaying his financial records. "I'm requesting a second diagnostic workup. Havoc's clinical presentation doesn't match degenerative myelopathy progression." Marsh's eyes narrowed. "I'm the senior veterinarian at this facility. My diagnosis stands. Complete the euthanasia, or I'll have you removed from this case and perform it myself." Dev rose from his chair, his body language shifting to tactical readiness. "The dog isn't dying, and you know it." Marsh's professionalism cracked. "Stay out of this, Callahan. You're a civilian now. You have no authority here." "But I do," Lisa said quietly. "And I'm not killing a healthy dog based on falsified records." Marsh's face went red. "You're finished, Moreno. I'll have your credentials revoked, your career destroyed. You have no idea who you're—" He stopped mid-sentence, finally seeing what was displayed on Lisa's computer screen. His bank records, Cerberus Global Defense wire transfers, and the 8 falsified euthanasia files arranged in chronological order. Marsh turned to leave. Dev moved to block the door. "You're not going anywhere," Dev said. That evening, Dr. Marsh arrived at the veterinary hospital with base security personnel and revised orders declaring Havoc an immediate threat due to unpredictable aggression secondary to neurological deterioration. It was a fabricated emergency diagnosis designed to authorize immediate euthanasia without oversight, the rabies protocol that bypassed all standard protections. But Dev Callahan wasn't just a retired handler. He was a SEAL who'd spent 15 years planning operations, anticipating enemy movements, and preparing for contingencies. When Marsh entered the procedure room expecting to find a civilian veterinarian and a grieving handler, he instead found NCIS Special Agent Maria Torres, Base Legal Officer Commander Sarah Wright, and complete video surveillance equipment displaying every threatening word Marsh had spoken that afternoon. Dev had called his former command the moment they'd discovered the falsified records, had contacted NCIS, had set up recording equipment, had turned the examination room into an evidence collection operation. Havoc, very much mobile, very much alert, walked across the room and sat at Dev's side with perfect operational discipline. Zero paralysis, complete neurological function. Marsh's face went pale as Agent Torres held up her tablet, displaying evidence they'd compiled over the past 6 hours. Financial records showing $840,000 in deposits from Cerberus Global Defense. Encrypted messages detailing the sale of 8 military working dogs with prices ranging from $95,000 to $120,000 each, and GPS tracking data. Dr. Marsh, Torres said formally, you're under arrest for theft of federal property, fraud, falsification of official documents, conspiracy to traffic military assets, and animal cruelty. Marsh tried bluster. These dogs were going to be retired anyway. I gave them purpose instead of letting them rot in civilian homes. Handlers can't afford specialized medical care. I found them real work with contractors who need... You stole federal property, Dev interrupted, his voice lethal calm. You faked medical records and sold warriors to contractors who work them until they die. You didn't give them purpose. You gave them a death sentence for profit. And you made handlers like me believe we were choosing mercy when we were actually authorizing theft. Agent Torres displayed GPS data on her tablet. Bolt, the dog you declared dead from liver cancer 6 months ago. He's currently working at a Cerberus facility in Kandahar. 3 other supposedly euthanized dogs are at contractor sites in Iraq and Somalia. And we have communications showing you were planning to sell Havoc for $150,000 because of his SEAL-level training. Marsh's professionalism shattered. You have no idea what these contractors pay for elite dogs. The military was just going to retire them, waste their training. The military was going to let them live, Lisa said quietly, with families, with handlers who loved them. You turned them into merchandise. Base security moved forward with restraints. Marsh's final words as they led him away. Those dogs are assets. I just reallocated them. Dev looked at Havoc, who sat patiently despite the chaos, trusting that his handler had everything under control. He's not an asset, Dev said. He's my brother. The NCIS investigation moved with military efficiency. Every financial transaction, every encrypted message, every falsified medical record was authenticated, analyzed, and added to the prosecution case against Dr. Philip Marsh. The evidence was overwhelming. 8 military working dogs trafficked over 14 months for $840,000 total. Cerberus Global Defense had been purchasing elite military dogs for high-risk contract work in conflict zones. No retirement plans, no medical care beyond immediate operational necessity, no consideration for the animals beyond their utility. The dogs weren't partners. They were disposable assets worked until injury or death removed them from service. Marsh faced federal charges, theft of government property valued over $100,000, fraud, conspiracy, animal cruelty under federal statute, and falsification of official military documents. His veterinary license was suspended pending criminal proceedings. Cerberus Global Defense faced massive fines and contract cancellations. But the most important operation was recovery. Joint NCIS and military police teams executed coordinated raids on Cerberus facilities across 3 countries. 8 dogs had been sold. 5 were recovered alive: Bolt, Ranger, Storm, and 2 others whose names the handlers had chosen to honor their service. All 5 showed severe malnourishment, untreated injuries, and psychological trauma consistent with abusive working conditions. Bolt had a partially healed bullet wound in his shoulder. No veterinary treatment, just field dressing and return to work. Ranger had broken ribs from explosive detonation, healed crooked because no one had bothered with proper care. 3 dogs hadn't survived. They'd died from injuries sustained during contractor operations, worked until catastrophic failure, then discarded. The recoveries entered Lisa's rehabilitation program. She coordinated medical treatment with trauma specialists, designed recovery protocols that addressed both physical injuries and psychological damage, and contacted the original handlers. Dev visited daily, bringing havoc. The healthy German Shepherd's presence seemed to calm the traumatized dogs, proof that military working dogs could survive, could heal, could find safety again. Bolt's original handler, a Marine named Marcus Webb, broke down crying when he saw his partner alive. "I thought I'd killed him," Marcus whispered. "I signed the euthanasia authorization. I believed Marsh when he said Bolt was dying. I've spent 6 months thinking I chose to end his life." "You chose mercy," Lisa said gently. "Marsh chose deception. That's not on you." Dev officially adopted Havoc under expedited approval. The paperwork that should have cleared months ago finally processed in 48 hours. Havoc's medical records were corrected to reflect his actual condition: manageable osteoarthritis, treatable with anti-inflammatory medication, controlled exercise, and physical therapy. Havoc wasn't dying. He was just getting old, like every working dog eventually did. And old age was something that could be managed with care, not ended with lies. Dev started bringing Havoc to his high school classes twice a week as part of a veteran awareness program. Students learned about military service, working dogs, and the bond between handler and partner. They learned that heroism came in many forms, including the courage to question authority when something felt wrong. Lisa was promoted to senior veterinarian following Marsh's arrest. Her first act was implementing new protocols. All euthanasia recommendations now required independent second opinions from veterinarians outside the facility, handler notification within 24 hours of any terminal diagnosis, and mandatory waiting periods except in true medical emergencies where suffering was immediate and unmanageable. The military working dog program created a registry tracking every retired MWD's location and welfare. Quarterly check-ins with adoptive handlers, veterinary records shared across facilities. No dog would disappear again without triggering immediate investigation. 6 months after Havoc's near euthanasia, Dev and Lisa were dating, brought together by their refusal to let a dog die for someone else's profit. Sustained by shared commitment to protecting the animals, both had dedicated careers to serving. They attended the memorial service for the 3 dogs who hadn't survived Marsh's trafficking operation. The ceremony was held at Miramar National Cemetery, where a memorial plaque honored their service. Bolt sat beside the plaque, his graying muzzle resting on Dev's knee, alive because someone had questioned a diagnosis that seemed too rushed. One of Dev's students, a girl whose father was deployed overseas with a military working dog, asked the question that had been bothering her since the story made news. "Mr. Callahan, how did Dr. Moreno know Havoc wasn't really sick?" Dev looked at Lisa, who knelt beside Havoc, her hand gentle on his head. Lisa answered, "Because I watched your handler hug his partner and saw the truth. Havoc's legs were moving, standing, bearing weight, wagging his tail. Dogs with the condition Dr. Marsh claimed he can't do those things. Sometimes the most important diagnosis happens when you stop reading the file and start seeing the patient." Havoc's tail thumped against the ground, not the movement of a paralyzed dog, but the contentment of a warrior who knew he was finally safe, finally home, finally done running missions for anyone except the man who loved him. The student processed this. So you saved him by paying attention. I saved him by questioning, Lisa corrected. Dr. Marsh had authority, credentials, years of experience. But something didn't match what I was seeing. The most dangerous thing in medicine isn't incompetence. It's unquestioned authority, Dev added, and Havoc saved himself by being exactly who he is. A warrior who doesn't quit, even when someone's trying to kill him with paperwork instead of bullets. The ceremony concluded with taps played over the memorial grounds. Bolt, Ranger, and Storm stood at attention beside their handlers, survivors of trafficking, abuse, and the betrayal of someone who should have protected them. As attendees dispersed, Marcus Webb approached Dev and Lisa. I don't know how to thank you. Bolt was dead in my mind. I'd grieved him, moved on, and you brought him back. We didn't bring him back, Lisa said. We just found him where Marsh had hidden him. But you looked, Marcus said. When everyone else accepted the paperwork, you questioned it. That's the difference between 8 dead dogs and 5 recovered lives. Dev watched Havoc interact with the other surviving dogs, touching noses, tails wagging in synchronized contentment. The observation that had shocked Lisa 6 months ago, Havoc standing when he should have been paralyzed, had exposed a trafficking ring, saved 8 lives, 5 in time, 3 too late, and proved that sometimes the best medical assessment wasn't what was written in a chart. It was what happened when a seal hugged his dog, and that dog hugged back with legs that were never broken, only stolen. Havoc trotted to Dev's side, sat with perfect discipline, and looked up at his handler with amber eyes that held absolute trust. Dev's hand found the familiar position on his partner's head, the gesture that had defined a decade of deployment, combat, and survival. Good boy, Dev whispered. Best boy. We're going home. Havoc's tail wagged, not because of false promises or temporary safety, but because home had never been a location. It had always been a person, and that person was never letting him go again. Lisa watched them walk toward the parking lot, handler and dog moving in synchronized rhythm. She thought about the 23 military working dogs she'd euthanized during her career, each one necessary, each one merciful, each one haunting her still. But Havoc had been number 24 that didn't happen, because one observation had led to one question, and one question had shattered an entire system built on unquestioned authority. Sometimes salvation came not from dramatic intervention, but from the simple act of seeing what was actually there, instead of what paperwork claimed existed. Havoc was alive because Lisa had watched a dog stand when he should have been paralyzed. 8 families had their partners back because she'd refused to accept a diagnosis that contradicted observable reality. And somewhere, in conflict zones where Cerberus contractors no longer worked stolen military dogs to death, 3 warriors rested in peace, honored, remembered, and finally freed from the trafficking that had killed them. The observation that shocked the veterinarian had saved more than 1 dog. It had exposed a truth no one wanted to see, that even in institutions designed to protect, predators could hide behind credentials and authority until someone paid attention.